I looked at my exam results from the last 5 years and noticed 12 mistakes I kept making about a month before the exams. These mistakes were the reason my grades were not as good as they could have been. When I stopped making these mistakes, my grades improved a lot. Now I'm going to share these mistakes with you. Number 12, I used to do this a lot. I'd go through my notes, read the material, and feel confident that I remembered everything. But when it came time for the exam, I'd sit there and suddenly realize I couldn't recall half of what I thought I knew. Why did that happen? Well, reading something can make it feel familiar, but that feeling can trick you into thinking you've memorized it when you really haven't. Familiarity isn't the same as memory. You'll feel like you're prepared, but when you're sitting in the exam hall, your mind goes blank. Then I tried spaced repetition. By revisiting key topics at increasingly longer intervals, say 1 day, 3 days, and a week later, I found I was actually retaining the information much better. Number 11, I was always proud of my study plans. I'd sit down, create a perfect schedule, and divide my time for each subject. But despite all that effort, my grades didn't improve the way I expected. You know what I realized? My plans seemed flawless, except for one huge flaw. I was spending most of my time on things I already knew. It felt great to go over easy stuff because I could fly through it and feel like I was making progress. But when the exam questions focused on the areas I was weak in, I wasn't ready. The solution is to spend your time tackling the tough stuff first. Once I did that, I started seeing real improvements. Number 10. I used to believe that if I wasn't studying for at least 3 hours straight, I wasn't doing enough. I'd sit for 3 to 4 hours straight, thinking the longer I studied, the better I would do. But in reality, those long study sessions weren't helping at all. I was getting tired, and by the second hour, nothing was really staying in my mind. It's the classic quality versus quantity problem. Short, focused sessions of study, like the Pomodoro Technique, work way better. A 25-minute session with a 5-minute break keeps your brain fresh and alert. When I shifted to this, I started covering more in less time, without the burnout. Number 9. I used to think that if I highlighted everything in bright colors and made my notes look perfect, I'd automatically remember things better. But the truth is, while it feels productive to highlight and rewrite notes, it's often just busy work. It doesn't guarantee you'll remember anything during the exam. What I learned is that active recall, actually trying to remember things without looking at the material, works way better than just staring at pretty notes. Once I stopped obsessing over highlighters and focused on active learning, my results improved significantly. And one of my favorite active learning techniques is the SQ3R method, which I'll link for you in the description below. Number 8. This mistake really surprised me when I looked back at my past study habits. I was spending hours reading my notes, but when exam day came, I struggled with the questions. That's when I realized the huge mistake I was making. I wasn't testing myself. See, it's easy to feel confident when you're just reading, but reading isn't the same as recalling. If you can't explain it, you don't know it. Once I started doing mock tests and actively quizzing myself on what I studied, it completely changed the game. Number 7. Another big mistake I made was skipping past papers, thinking I was fine just reviewing my notes. But what I didn't realize is that exam questions follow certain patterns, and past papers give you a sneak peek into that. They help you understand how questions are framed, what topics get repeated, and even the level of difficulty to expect. Once I started using past papers, I was better prepared for the real thing. Number 6. I used to set these huge, unrealistic goals for myself, especially after hearing how much my classmates were doing. If someone said they studied for 8 hours straight, I'd think, I need to do the same or more to keep up. But the problem was, I wasn't being honest about what I could handle. I'd end up feeling frustrated when I couldn't keep up with these crazy expectations I'd set. What I've learned is that everyone works differently. Just because someone else can do it doesn't mean it's the right approach for me. Then, instead of pushing myself to match others, I focused on what worked best for me. That way, I stayed consistent and didn't burn out. Number 5. I used to always underestimate how much time I had, thinking I could leave things to the last minute and somehow get it done. I'd tell myself, I still have a few days, I'll get to it later. But before I knew it, the deadline was right in front of me. The pressure would hit, and I'd scramble to get everything done, often not doing my best because I was rushing. What I realized is that time feels like it's enough until it isn't. Breaking tasks down and starting earlier helped me avoid that last-minute panic, and honestly, it made the work so much easier to handle. I stopped stressing out, and the quality of my work improved too. Number 4. Here's a mistake I made all the time. As the exams got closer, I would increase my study hours, barely taking any breaks. I'd wake up, hit the books, and keep going until I couldn't study anymore, thinking I was being super productive. And that's where I kept failing. I'd study endlessly without giving my brain time to process and absorb, which meant my recall during the exam was horrible. It's like filling a cup with water. It can only hold so much before it starts overflowing. So what did I change? I started scheduling mental breaks, times where I'd step away from my study space and go for a walk. This way, I came back to studying with a clear mind, ready to absorb more. Number 3. I made the mistake of thinking that learning new topics right before exams would give me an edge. I'd skip revising what I already knew and spend hours diving into new chapters I hadn't covered. But what ended up happening? I couldn't fully grasp the new material, and I forgot parts of the stuff I already knew. It's a double loss. What I realized is that revision is far more important than cramming in new topics at the last second. Revisiting and reinforcing what you've already learned solidifies it in your brain. Number 2. I used to think that pulling all-nighters was a sign of dedication. If I was staying up late to study, that meant I was working hard, right? But here's the harsh truth. A tired brain is a useless brain. No matter how much you study, if you're not getting enough sleep, your brain won't retain the information. And trust me, nothing is worse than sitting in an exam feeling foggy and unable to think clearly because you didn't get enough sleep. Once I started prioritizing proper sleep, I found that I retained more information and could concentrate better during exams. Number 1. For the longest time, I believed studying alone was the only way to focus. But then I noticed something. When I tried studying with a group of motivated friends, I actually learned better, discussing topics, explaining things to others, and hearing different perspectives made everything click faster. But not all study groups are effective, and it's important to choose study groups that are serious about learning. It's all about studying smarter instead of studying harder. And for more smart study tips, I have a whole Study Smart playlist for you.